Bum 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 bum. Hey Kevin, come on in here. Grab your coffee. Where are the rest of you? Come on. It's time. Andy, Pat, come on in. All right. I think you may have noticed that it's sort of a slow news day so far. Could get more interesting. Let's talk about a few things that are happening that are interesting. You may have seen the president's tweet in which he tweeted a clip of Schumer, his nemesis Schumer, who is his nemesis on immigration in particular, saying pretty much exactly what the president says, except it was a while ago and the president wasn't saying it as president or candidate. So Schumer was completely on his side. I'm not sure how long ago that clip was, but nothing changed. So it's sort of disgusting to see the level of awfulness. However, let's look ahead a little bit. Imagine, if you will, that what Chuck Schumer said about immigration, whenever that clip was, must have been several years ago, was completely in agreement with what President Trump says now. So what would happen if the Democrats get control of, let's say, the House? Let's say Congress is split. Does that make the odds of a good immigration package better or worse? Because the main reason that the Democrats won't play with the Republicans is because they just don't want to give the Republicans a win. It's not because they disagree, right? I mean, they pretend they disagree, but you can tell from the video clip of Schumer that he doesn't really disagree on the main points. So what happens when they can get a win? So if there's a mixed Congress, the president would have to work with the Democrats to get something through, which would give the Democrats some kind of a win. So we may have a situation where a mixed Congress actually helps this president, possibly on health care, possibly on immigration. It could happen. I don't think you can rule out that President Trump will come out ahead if the Congress is mixed. Now, if, let's say, it goes the other way, let's say there's a red wave, and the president gets even more Republicans in power. Well, unless those Republicans have a dominant position where they've got enough of them that they can just force anything through, they're still going to be in this weird middle ground where the Democrats would still have enough power that they can thwart them. So we might come out ahead, and even Republicans might get more of what they want with a few more Democrats in power. So you can't really predict how this will go. I'm not telling you that's what I prefer. I'm telling you it's not predictable. And if I had to, gun to head and I had to predict, I would say that a mixed Congress will get the president more power, not less. It's possible. But the other thing that I'd like to, somebody said Trump's black approval is at 36%. I believe that's based on a typo. I saw Candace Owens doing a video in which she said that black support was, I think, 39% or something. But then you look at the actual numbers and it's more like 29%. Yeah, so I don't think the 39 is real. I think that was actually just a typo. 36%? I don't know. Let's look at the numbers. It's much higher, whatever it was, and that's important. One of the things I had underestimated is how amazingly unpopular Omarosa was in the black community. Apparently, she was quite hated for being on Trump's side. 36 is the new poll, huh? Wow. Does that seem possible? Let me just Google that. 36% Rasmussen. Let's see if that pops up. Holy hell, you are not kidding me. Trump's... Okay, I thought you were kidding. I honestly didn't think that was even possible. Now, again, remember, the critics are going to say that Rasmussen, leans Republican. But it was the Rasmussen's own poll that shows it going from 19 to 36. So this day last year was at 19. It literally doubled in 1 year. Well, well, well. Congratulations to Candace Owens. I don't think anybody has more to do with this, do you? Probably Candace. Kanye West, of course, and that's a big deal. But it feels like Candace is the one who pulled everything together. Now, what I'm curious about, though, is how Candace plays on the left. We see her all the time, but I'm not even sure how much attention she gets outside of the right silo. So, do you wonder if there's something else going on there? If you were to look at all the different forces that might be behind this, probably the economy is the number one thing. But the second thing is, I don't think being tough on immigration, so the president's being tough on immigration, I think the black community is kind of looking at that and saying, it's hard to see how this isn't good for us. One of the great things about our system is that you're allowed to vote for your own self-interest. It's a democracy. You can vote for whoever you think is good for you. You don't have to vote for who's good for other people. You can. You just don't have to. And I think probably the African American citizens of this country are saying to themselves, well, I don't want to sound like I dislike illegal immigrants, because I might sound like a racist myself, but it's hard to avoid the fact that if there's less immigration, there's less competition for jobs on the low end, and that might be important. So something tells me immigration might be the secret sauce that allows everything else to work, that plus good employment. Another factor might be that, and I said this before, that the Democratic Party has sort of self-branded itself a female-centric party. And I don't know if you're a male African-American Democrat, if you're feeling entirely comfortable there anymore. I don't know how that feels. I would love to see the split. Has anybody seen this? Have you seen the split in the African American polling between the male and female, and whether or not there's, if I had to take a guess, and this is just a guess, all right, I'm not gonna bank on this. Don't make this one of my predictions that you grade me on. If I had to guess, I would guess that there are more male African American citizens who are moving to a pro-Trump point of view than female. I think, just guessing. I'd love to see some numbers on that. Now, I put in the title of my Periscope that I tweeted an article about RBS, the Royal Bank of Scotland. And apparently they've been caught, there must be some tapes or something, in which members of the bank in the lending department were talking about how they were quite aware that they were destroying the housing market and therefore much of the economy of the United States by making loans that they knew to be fraudulent. I mean, just think about that. A gigantic bank was making loans, mortgage loans apparently, that they knew to be fraudulent and they knew would destroy the economy of the United States, according to these recordings that are alleged. So let me add alleged to all of this just to stay out of trouble. So alleged. All right, now I'm out of trouble. Now, you might ask yourself, Scott, why did you tweet this? Is it because it's a slow news day? Well, it is, but that's not my interest. Is it because it's a banking story and I used to be a banker? No, that is not why it has my interest. It has my interest because years ago, I had a little trouble with the Royal Bank of Scotland. Yes, I personally had a little bit of a trouble with the Royal Bank of Scotland. Now, I'd love to tell you about it, but let's just say lawyers were involved, well, a lot of lawyers, and I can't tell you about it. Because one of the things that lawyers often end up doing is saying, hey, when this is all wrapped up, how about we don't talk about it? So I can't talk about it. But let me tell you a few general things that I feel safely that I can say. One is this. There are two things that you want to avoid in this world. There are lots of things you want to avoid, but I'll talk about two of them. One is you don't want to ever get in a conflict with an entity that has billions of dollars and very expensive lawyers. If I can tell you anything that would be good advice, do not get involved in a dispute with an entity that has billions of dollars and can afford very expensive lawyers. Don't do that. Here's the second bit of advice. Don't get in a dispute with an angry cartoonist who's also a hypnotist and will stop at nothing to crush your fucking balls. Don't ever do that. You should never be in either one of those situations. Just a general statement. So, I can't tell you more than that. I can just tell you that the Royal Bank of Scotland is one big frickin' piece of crap. If I may implore you, if any of you do business with the Royal Bank of Scotland, I would ask you to stop. Consider all alternatives. If you're working with any kind of a subsidiary, just know, if you're American, this can go for the rest of you too, but if you're American, you should know that they tried to destroy your country and that you should never do business with the Royal Bank of Scotland based on this article in Business Insider. Because now we know that they were trying to destroy your country, Americans. Why would you ever do business with them again? So, that's the end of my little rant. I wish I could tell you more. But that's all I can tell you. Now, there's some news. I just tweeted this out. Article in Breitbart. Joel Pollack had an article about Brennan. So Brennan has apparently written his own response to losing his intelligence credentials, or his intelligence, clearance. And he said that a big part of why he started the investigation about Trump collusion was because of Trump's joke in public where he said, hey, Russia, if you've got Hillary's email, let's see them. I think it was Hillary's email, right? Now, how many times have I told you that 1/3 of the public can't tell the difference between a joke and, something that's not a joke? I'm not kidding about that. It's roughly 1/3 of the public quite literally doesn't have a sense of humor. I will go further and tell you that I'll bet that someday, here's a prediction, this one you can bank on. Here's a prediction. Someday, 23andMe and other places that check your DNA, they will be able to determine if you have a sense of humor. Seriously. You will be able to know genetically if you have a sense of humor. I did 23andMe, and it's fascinating how much it does know. It can know stuff like, will your hair turn lighter in the sun? Do you have a sneeze reflex when you see the sun? What kind of allergies you might get? But the one, they just gave me an update, and one of the updates was that I would not be very good at holding a tune. So in other words, I'm a little bit musically ungifted, if you know what I mean. Whereas Christina, my girlfriend, who is musically gifted, she plays a number of instruments at a very high level. Her test came back, and sure enough, it said that people with her DNA are usually musically gifted. Not usually, but strong propensity. Now, if your DNA can tell if you are musically inclined, or you can hear tones right, I feel confident in saying that someday they'll be able to determine if you have a sense of humor. And it's going to be devastating because a third of the public is going to be outed as not having one. I know if you're not a professional humorist, this is hard to believe, because if you see a crowd of people, and there's a humorist, it seems like they're all laughing. But if you were to zoom in on the audience, and it wouldn't matter who the comedian was, if you zoomed in, you'd see that about a third of them are not laughing. They're just like, and they're looking at the people around them laughing, and they're like, well, if people are laughing, I suppose I should at least clap a little bit. I think some of this is funny, but I can't really tell. Now, that's very much the way I listen to music. Being on the low end of music appreciation, where I am, I still like, a good song, but I've noticed that I mostly like music when I'm around other people who are liking it. In other words, I'm picking up something from the social interaction, so that if other people are really loving a song, the odds of me also loving it go way up. So that's how unmusical I am, that I'm just completely influenced by the crowd. So Brennan may have started one of the most important political witch hunts in history based on not recognizing a joke. And I'm not even making that up. I feel fairly confident in saying that what I just said is literally true, that the head of the CIA has almost destroyed the United States because he didn't understand an obvious joke was a joke. Now, he might be lying about that. It could be that he's just using that as an excuse and say, oh, it was really about that thing he said that, didn't look like a joke to me. So maybe it's something he wanted to do and he just needed what I call a fake because. He was already inclined to do it, but he wanted to wait. So we don't know, but it's entirely possible, and we can't rule it out at this point, that he started something that could almost destroy the planet Earth. If you imagine that it could be a ripple effect of destabilizing the United States, which causes God knows what, nuclear war. But that's sort of on Brennan. Now, if you've got a guy who's willing to put the entire stability of the world at risk because he can't tell the difference between a joke and a serious statement, that guy's got to lose his security clearance, at least. I wouldn't want him anywhere near a decision, would you? After seeing how Brennan responded to a public joke, would you want him to make any important decisions about anything? I mean, that's some scary stuff. And having watched him in public now for, I guess, 2 years, would you trust him in any kind of job? Like, I don't know what kind of job I would trust that guy, because we've seen some bad judgment and bad intentions, probably. I don't want to be a mind reader, but there's some things we can say that are objectively true. It looks like bad judgment to us, so we can say that. We can't read his mind, though. All right. Somebody says, is it true that Brennan is Muslim? There's no evidence of that, but he is a friend to Islam. I think we could say that, which is not a bad thing. You know, there's nothing wrong with being a friend to all the religions, but I understand why it's raising an eyebrow. But that alone, I don't think that alone is something you can bank on. Well, you could bank on it if it's the RBS, Royal Bank of Scotland. Yeah, if you want to bank on Brennan, your bank should be the Royal Bank of Scotland. That would be the one. Why haven't I sipped yet? That is an excellent question. How often do we get this far into Coffee with Scott Adams without a simultaneous sip? I think we're going to have to catch up. Do you have your cup, your mug, your vessel? Because it's time for the simultaneous sip. Now, I know that what some of you are thinking. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, damn it, Scott, I'm not going to take a simultaneous sip just because you want me to. What are you trying to do to me? I'm a free thinker. I will never have a simultaneous sip. And that's fine. For those of you who want to go against the grain, you want to go the other way, that's good. But I think I can speak for all of you who have enjoyed the simultaneous sip. It does make the coffee taste better. And if you haven't experienced it, well, you have to take our word for it. And now, the simultaneous sip. Somebody said I was sipping past the sale, which is very funny. Simultaneous resistors. Didn't I say I had something else to talk about today? Can somebody remind me what I put in the title of my Periscope here? Oh, by the way, if you're watching my Periscopes on YouTube, if you're watching them on YouTube, make sure that you're watching my actual account. There are some fake accounts that take my Periscopes and put them on YouTube. They are not me, so look for Real Coffee with Scott Adams. I tweeted the actual link to it yesterday, so you can see it in my Twitter feed. So please watch that one. Yes, the WhenHub startup, my startup, is now listed on CoinPulse. I'll have more about that on another Periscope, but we're now able to trade the When tokens that are part of the Interface by WhenHub app. I'll talk more about that another time. Scott, are you trying to fleece us? No, I'm trying to make an app that I think will be useful in a whole variety of ways, including education and keeping lonely people company. You know, if you haven't seen it, my app, the Interface app, it's available in stores, and I'll just say one thing about it. It's designed so that anybody can sign up as an expert at anything. You just have to know more than the people who want advice from you, and that you can set your own price, and people can immediately call you. So you're available now. Somebody says, oh, I want an expert, and they're immediately on a video call with an expert, at the price set by the expert. But I'm starting to think that maybe its larger application that would be useful is keeping people company. I saw that there in Japan, middle-aged men are actually renting themselves out to give advice that a middle-aged man would know and just keep people company. Have you heard of that? And there are other people, I think, who are making scads of money on YouTube who just eat. It's just a YouTube of somebody eating their lunch. And these are used to largely just keep people company. And I'm thinking, how many people would pay just to have somebody hang out with them for a while? And it's probably a lot. Because keep in mind that, the price could be quite reasonable, especially if it's somebody in another country, somebody who just has some free time, maybe somebody who just wants to do it. So it might be that the biggest application is just somebody who wants to provide some company, some mild advice, some life advice, and that sort of thing. I was thinking the other day about how much knowledge I have accumulated in my way too long life, and how if I didn't share it, it would be just sort of stranded. By the time you reach my age, and when you've been involved in as many different businesses as I have, and you've seen the ones that worked and the ones that failed, I've got an MBA degree in economics. I've been probably involved in, 25 different businesses, one way or another. When you've done that many things, you have all this sort of, I hate to call it wisdom, but experience locked up in your head. And it's just a shame that it would be stranded there. So there are lots of people like me who have tons of knowledge that they can unlock. I've said this before about race relations, and particularly the African American community. And also women. So this is something that women and African Americans, citizens, have in common, which is, if it's true that the people who mostly have the power and the influence in our society are white men, just on average, they've got more of the power and the networks and the connections and the experience and all that. If that's true, and I think most people would say that's where it's concentrated, if you don't have access to all of those people, then you don't have the biggest financial asset that a person could have, which is who you know. Who you know, especially if you're related to them, that helps a lot, is going to be everything. Who you know really, really matters. And I've said this before, but especially in the Me Too era, if a professional woman, let's say a woman in the business world, wanted to get some advice or network with a man and said, hey, how about, would you like to go to lunch? What would that man, or should that man, say or do? In the era of Me Too, I don't know if the man is going to take the lunch. And if he does, he might have to invite, somebody else there just so he has some witnesses. So you're not going to get the same kind of interaction that two men will get. It's very common for a man to say, hey, how about a cup of coffee? Like, I get that request all the time. The number of men who have contacted me to say, hey, do you have a minute? Let's, for a phone call, a cup of coffee. And of course I say, most of the time I don't have time, but lots of times I say, sure. And then they can get connected to whatever people I know, wisdom, etc. And it's free. It doesn't cost them anything most of the time. But if a woman made the same request and said, hey, do you want to meet me for lunch? I wouldn't take that. I would not go to lunch with a woman in the era of Me Too. And how devastatingly bad is that for women? I'm not talking about me in particular, but that is such a bad situation. Now let's take, a similar but different situation for African American, let's say people in the business world who want to network, want to connect. Now I would, of course, if it's a male, let's say if it's an African American male, I would definitely take the lunch, take the coffee, if I have time. Time allowing is always the biggest thing. But I would take that. But do they ask? How many African American men have contacted me compared to the number of, let's say, Asian Americans, Indian Americans, and white Americans? That group very easily contacts me all the time. So it's just almost every day somebody in one of those groups says, hey, can I talk to you? Can I connect? Can I get some advice? Can I do something? But the number of African American men who contact me is lower than, the percentage in the population even. And I don't know why that is exactly, but I assume that it's just a little less comfortable. That's a gigantic disadvantage. And so I'm hoping that the Interface app, maybe one of the things it could do is just make it easier to contact somebody that you wouldn't easily contact. Maybe you wouldn't go to lunch with them, but you'd have you might have a phone call. And the other advantage of the Interface app, this is my startups app, is that you can be as anonymous as you want to be, because the person on the other end is not going to get your phone call or your contact information. So only the app knows who you are or how to contact you. So if you were a woman and you wanted some advice from a male, but you didn't want to have that male have your phone number, which is probably pretty common, the Interface app would let you do that. All right. So if you pay them, do they have to be nice to you? Well, we hope they will be. All right, I think I've said enough for now. Let me just add one other thing. If you haven't yet gone to the website blightauthority.com, then you should check it out, because that's where Bill Pulte and I have a website where we can collect ideas about what to do with these blighted urban areas, what to build on the blank, the empty pieces of land. And we had a denial of service attack that came out of China, which doesn't mean that China was behind it. I suppose hackers could have taken over a server in China and directed it to attack the site. But so I thought to myself, of all the websites in the world that you were going to attack with a denial of service, why that one? It literally has no negative anything to it. It's just a collection of good ideas to help people who need help in the urban areas, something to build, something that would be positive. There's literally nothing about that that's negative, and that gets a denial of service attack. I mean, who is that awful that that's the thing you attack? I mean, it's mind-boggling that anybody would even bother. So anyway, you can either go to Blight Authority or the Blight Authority. I believe they both go to the same page. And give us your ideas. I'll be talking a lot more about that in its own Periscopes. There may be some exciting things coming up soon, but I can't say anything about that yet because I don't know. But there might be some exciting developments there. So stay tuned, and I will talk to you another time, maybe sometime soon. See you later.